Near the end of every Star Citizen quarterly patch cycle, it feels a little too easy for me to take the changes from the latest milestone for granted. After a few weeks, the new additions blend right into the existing ones, and my perspective on how far the needle was actually moved by CIG is easily warped. In this 3.10 branch debrief, I cover the changes that were most impactful to my own gameplay experience, what I think was executed well, any notable misses, and even some thoughts on the next two releases. One of the first improvements I noticed early on in the live build was how often I was logging back into the game using a ship bed. In prior patches, this would only happen if my gameplay sessions were fairly close together, making me think I was simply getting lucky by logging back into the same game server. But in the 3.10, even after week-long breaks, I was pleasantly surprised to be stepping out of my ship's bed instead of at a landing zone. If you follow other Star Citizen content on YouTube, you might have heard some chatter describe this as evidence that some components of CIG's anticipated iCache system are starting to become operational. And if you're unsure of what I'm talking about, the iCache is essentially a global database that will eventually house all of the data for every entity and condition in the verse. Having this persistent data decoupled from the compute power required to run the game servers is a big step towards server meshing and enabling higher player counts. So this is exciting progress. I think 3.10 is significant because of its focus on quality of life. From 30,000 feet, this patch didn't contain much that was directly linked to any of the core release pillars. 3.9's player status system or 3.8's server-side object container streaming, for instance, are much sexier topics to cover and check off bigger boxes for CIG. However, 3.10 brought some sneaky additions that might be easier to diminish while still carrying important gameplay implications. The player trading app is a good example of this. It provides an essential incentive that encourages group activity and creates more opportunities for that ever-elusive emergent gameplay. The handful of flight experience updates and tweaks I think also apply. Atmospheric flight is substantially more enjoyable with the improved thruster efficiency curves. Group play is further incentivized with the new turret improvements, and the updated heads-up display that most ships received also positively aids the overall experience. Unfortunately for me, I didn't really feel the influence from the high-speed combat changes or new targeting methodology as much, but I still think they illustrate reasonable efficacy from CIG and their dedicated vehicle team. Other subtleties that carry on the quality of life theme might include the tweaked station behaviors that combat pad ramming, and how expanding Grimhex opens up more options for larger ships near Crusader. Ironically, for the time being, Grimhex has become somewhat of a trader haven, despite being positioned as one of the pirate-leaning locations in the verse. The new Babbage editions also look nice, while not as immediately useful, to me at least. The colored Mobiglass devices are fine, and while Pico or Pico seems to have an important data tracking purpose, I just really don't understand the community obsession with the thing. I mean, I don't hate it, but the subreddit was a bit overrun with these for a few weeks. Where CIG starts to miss, I think, begins with AI. This quarter, FPS AI acquired a more diverse set of armaments to engage the player with. They also attempt to find cover and avoid hostile fire, and seem to attack their targets more consistently. But if you're a gambler, you're still likely to bet against all of this coming together to create a satisfying experience. And to be fair, many of the details are marred by other components that aren't even directly AI related. CIG is also not claiming that this is the final iteration. However, it was recently pseudo-insinuated with a roadmap card that has since been removed that FPS AI was entering a home stretch type of stage, which I'm quite skeptical of. The card was removed on September 4th, though, to be combined with some other related features in a future release, which sounds like the right decision. New bartender behaviors were introduced, but also suffer intermittent success. They do represent important progress with complex NPC patterns being used in other scenarios in the verse, but they currently get stuck fairly often and are usually slow to respond if they decide to at all. So right now, I just don't think they have the ability to properly illustrate those supposed gains. To play devil's advocate, the techniques behind making these separate AI examples operate might not be great comparisons. And as an ignorant observer, it's easy to oversimplify and incorrectly attach blame for these issues. But from a backer's perspective, they still exemplify one of the areas where Star Citizen needs improvement the most. So, looking to the future at 3.11 and 3.12, the rest of the year appears to be riding the same quality of life wave. Core gameplay loops and professions are largely missing from the current feature list for the next 2 patches. I'm sure it could be argued that 3.11's cargo deck will improve trading in some big ways, and 3.12's station refining will further expand the mining role. While I don't mean to marginalize either of these, I still don't see them on par with something more complete like salvage or exploration. Additionally, the current roadmap is said to be on the chopping block, hopefully being replaced by a new format that more accurately portrays development progress. Regarding professions then, I think we're more likely to see these communicated in the future as a collection of improvements instead of a single feature card. Most of the features that we can currently look at seem to complement and layer on to existing ones, rather than introducing paradigm-shifting gameplay. Forced reaction should make ship combat more visceral, improved throw will not only make grenades more viable, but should also allow for some unusual fun like tossing water bottles and sandwiches at your friends while they're piloting. Elevator panel updates, death animation improvements, the relaxation of armistice zones, and even object push and pull serve more to enhance existing opportunities over creating completely new ones. In my opinion, the player and external inventory system is one of the more important additions to the current roadmap. What's going to potentially weigh this down, though, will be how well inventory persists across gameplay sessions. Hopefully, it follows the path of bed logouts and illustrates more success with the iCache system. It would also have been really nice if the first implementation of this gave us the ability to loot incapacitated or dead players. But according to the September 17th Inside Star Citizen, this unfortunately will not be the case. It might sound like I'm dogging on the next 2 patches, but I'm actually cautiously optimistic that most of these features will not only make it into their releases, but also surprise us with their effectiveness. I still want to see more of the game's promised professions implemented before the end of 2021. However, the gameplay additions coming in both 3.11 and 3.12 should positively affect every player, whereas adding a new profession might have a more segmented interest with players looking for a specific gameplay loop. At the end of the day, we're going to need both if Star Citizen wants to live up to Chris's vision, so hopefully the CitizenCon stream still delivers a substantial amount of info this year, despite its truncated format. At any rate, that's all I have for today. Let me know in the comments if you liked or hated anything I had to say.